Thank you to all of you for joining us this morning. Last time we were on the stage, Ramel, was 6 years ago. Closing night of New Directors, New Films for Hale County this evening. So I'm just wondering if you can just tell us a little bit about at what point in this, the 6 years, did you come across Nickel Boys, the Colson Whitehead novel, which hadn't been published yet at the time, and how you came on board as to adapt this?
Yeah, thanks for staying, everyone. I came across it when Dee Dee and Jeremy rang up Jocelyn to chat about something. We didn't even know what it was about. And we went and met them, and...
You should say Dee Dee Gardner and Jeremy Kleiner from Plan B.
Plan B, sorry.
And Jocelyn Barnes, your co-writer.
Just so used to the shorthand of just talking to all the familiar faces.
Everybody knows.
I will say everyone's full name from now on. And also all other info I know about them, just to make sure that the information's accurate. So so met with Jeremy Kleiner and Dee Dee Gardner from Plan B Entertainment, which is co-owned with Brad Pitt. Just kidding. I mean, it's true, but and they, we just chatted for 2 hours, and then they said, hey, we have this book, Nickel Boys, that we think you might be interested in. Would you like to read it? And I read it. And it was phenomenal, as expected. It's a Colson Whitehead book, and
the book was already out, or not?
No. We had like a PDF. Option. I printed out like our kind of confidential manuscript. Kind of went from there with Jocelyn, obviously Jocelyn Barnes, co-writer.
At what point in the process of reading the book did you figure out how you wanted to adapt it? Did you know right away as you were reading, or did you have to sit with it for a bit?
Yeah, it's. I love the question because it forces me to find the point which was not really in language, because you're reading it and you're kind of building your own universe. I think the first question that spurred, I think I couldn't adapt it to the things that I'm interested in visually, was thinking about when Elwood realized that he was raced, like when he realized he was a black person. And that process to me, being a person that has come into the world as many other people on this stage and then had to be confronted with what the world says that you are, a black person, and obviously we are in varying degrees, was like a thing that I'm like, oh, that's quite poetic. And that's something that's cumulative, and that's something that's, looking glass kind of theory. So, yeah. But POV was the first thing I thought of, honestly. My work, Dennis. I have this image called I Home, and it's my hand holding, in a 4x5 image, holding a phone, and there's an antebellum home in the background. And to me, that was like an intervention in Southern photography that claimed authorship. And I went to that image immediately because that forces a person to understand who's looking.
I'm curious about the decision to do POV, not just to do POV, but to do POV in a sustained way. I'm wondering if you thought about, other films that have attempted this or not, or maybe photography was, was your reference point instead. But it's something that happens in films, but rarely happens for the duration of a film.
Yeah, I must say, Dennis, separately, I really wish I could look at all my friends here while I was talking. So maybe next time I'll be on the other end so I can look across their faces. Because I feel like I'm ignoring them.
No, it's.
But sorry guys.
Okay, you can look there.
Okay. So I think Lady in the Lake was the first official film to attempt it or do it. And honestly, from Enter the Void to there's a Catherine Bigelow film that does it, I think, quite well.
Strange Days.
Yeah, for a little bit. And Hardcore Henry, of course, was the one where it's oh, this is what we don't want it to be. Though the film is not the worst. I mean, the film is good, sorry. You guys know what I'm saying. It's a good film, but it's an action cam film. And to me, that's not POV. To me, that's having a camera in a wide frame close to someone's body, which is just giving you the sense of like the sort of chaos of being the central point, central locus in time and movement. That's like POV to me. That like the test for POV, the proof of concept, which Jocelyn and I used to sort of like to show and make the treatment and stuff, was images or scenes from Hell County, because the way in which the camera is used there, it's long lens and it's shallow focus, and you can control someone's attention, which is to me closer to POV than having a wide frame, being able to see the same field of view.
Right.
And so that's kind of how went back to Hell County for it.
Right. I wanted to bring the actors into this actually, and maybe hear from all of them about this, what it was like to work with this very specific way of making a film. Actually, maybe we can start with Ethan and Brandon. And before Ramel, can you talk about casting the two of them?
Thank the Lord we got them. I mean, honestly, thank the Lord we got every person on this stage. I think all films are, contingent on its parts, but I feel like if without each of these pieces, like it kind of collapses in a way. But I think that's what happens when it's done and there's like some sort of like magical touch that is ineffable, that unites everything. These two were the standouts by far from the casting tapes that we got. I found that, we found that because it was a huge collective process of choosing. Brandon was the first one we saw. He just was Turner. And he was also other characters you wanted him to be, which was why he was so good. Like, he didn't read like a historical young man. He read like someone who was, bringing his personal life into the character. And then Ethan here was the latest find and the most scariest, because we, were weeks away from shooting and we hadn't found who we thought was the right guy. And then we saw his face and his eyes and his optimism that just kind of exist even in conversation. And we were sold. And then when they did a chemistry read, everyone, big sigh of relief. Yeah.
Ethan, Brandon, I was curious to hear you talk about just, this particular way of shooting the film. Did you find it like an interesting or useful restraint, or is it confining as an actor to have to work this way?
Yeah, it's a completely nothing like I think anyone on the stage has ever experienced before. And honestly, I didn't pay attention to the fact that that's how we were going to be doing it during the whole casting process. I read the script and it said POV, whenever, for most of Elwood's lines and everything, and I just kind of ignored it. I was more focused on the story and Elwood and, connecting with the material. And then show up on set that first day and I'm kind of handed this rig with the camera attached to it, and we're like, all right, we're gonna take a shot of like your hands. And I was like, oh, we're jumping right into this. And I think that there was no time to be, worried or scared. It was kind of just, all right, like if they want to jump into it, let's jump into it. And so I think that was very helpful for starting. And it took some time because, again, doing this, when you start acting, one of the first things you learn is like, yeah, you don't look into the camera. It's not something that you acknowledge. It's supposed to be there. Whereas in this experience, like you always have to be when you are talking to Turner or to Elwood. And so it's a bit of unlearning and then finding a way to connect and move in a way where you're not looking, into this lens, but you're looking into Turner's eyes or into Elwood's eyes. And it did take some time, and Brandon and I would work together before shooting scenes so that we were able to get a rhythm and a kind of understanding of how scenes would go, or maybe his face is reacting this way to something that Elwood says, and then when you get in front of that camera, it's just letting it melt into his face and letting kind of the imagination take hold and go from there.
Brandon.
I mean, yeah, my experience was pretty parallel with Ethan's, seeing that we were the two different perspectives looking into one another's eyes. But I mean, yeah, on that point, I mean, you saw the film, Ethan's eyes have like so much power, so to not be able to have that in the scene, it definitely took some getting used to be able to find his face on that lens. Yeah, but like you said, we got to play and different things that he would do that I wouldn't be able to see because he's off camera, like got to inform everything, and then we just got to go and play. And we were always very present with each other, so he was always very close, and I could always feel him, so it was good.
Anjanou, I'd love to hear you speak about that as well, but before that, I actually read an interview you did a year ago where you said that you actually tried to track down Ramel after you saw Hale County. Is that correct? Could you tell us a bit about your response to Hale? I mean, did you know he was making a fiction film, or did you just want to speak to him?
Well, I saw Hale County. Let's give a shout out to Hale County since we're here. And as a Southerner, I'm from Southwest Mississippi, and I often feel when I see documentaries or even photography that is about the South, about Southerners, particularly Black Southerners, I feel that it can be exploitative, insulting. But I saw Hale County, and I felt I was watching something that was familial, and I felt witnessed. I didn't feel like something in a fishbowl. And so I was so excited after seeing that movie. Saw it in Brooklyn at BAM. Sorry, y'all. Sorry.
That's okay.
That's,
BAM is a partner venue of the New York Film Festival as well.
I'm sorry. But I did see it there. And a couple days later, I knew that he was a professor at Brown. I went to Brown, so I knew the number, which was 401-861. Yes. So I knew how to reach him, and I called and got the whoever answers the phone, and I said, "May I speak to Ramel Ross, please?" Of course, they were like, "No." we can give him a message anyway. So I was so excited. I wanted to find him. I don't know what I was gonna say to you, but I just wanted to say thank you, probably. And then, I don't know, a year later, I heard that they were doing something and there might be a part in there for me. And I said I didn't care what it was, I just wanted it to be a part of it.
I'd love to hear from the other actors as well, if you want to talk about just your experience, working with this particular formal device, this way of shooting the film. I guess with David, it was a little bit different in your case.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I remember, so I got sent the script, and I was the first time I read a script, I read it like it's a novel. I'm not really thinking about who I'm gonna play. I'm like, do I like this thing? And I read it and loved it. I was already, and then I talked to Ramel, and he was explaining to me what was gonna happen. He was like, look, I don't want you to feel undervalued, but like, the camera's gonna be on your back, like you're wearing the camera, but it's behind your head. And I was like, lit. This sounds wild, and I've never done anything like this before, and I'm sure I won't get to again. So like, yeah, let's go. That was a huge selling point for me, but it was mostly because I did not understand what he was saying at all. And then he sent me some dailies of these two, just scenes that weren't, sort of rough cut together. And it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen before. And I was so enamored with them, and I was so enamored with the way it was shot. And then I was like, oh man, I don't want to fuck this up. So like when I showed up on set, they put the rig on me pretty early in the day, and we're like, you can take it off. And I was like, no, I don't think I can. Can you bring a monitor over here? I gotta how does it work? I don't want to, So that was my whole thing was just like, it felt like too much responsibility. I didn't want to sort of mess up the visual language of the thing, and so I spent all day in that thing just trying to sort of figure out how does it look the most natural now that it's behind somebody's head, and like what are the ways you can sit that work, what don't, where's my hand in the frame, blah blah blah. So like it was super technical, but also really fun, and I got to work with great actors, do some great scenes. It was a really incredible experience for me. But it was scary because I was coming into a thing that was a train that was already moving, and it was so clear that it was going to be gorgeous already, you know.
Fred?
To David's point, I thought what was one of the, like millions of amazing things about this was I was seeing how Ethan and Brandon also sometimes doubled as cinematographers, and then Jomo, who is a cinematographer of the film, also contributed in some ways as an actor, because practically speaking, we would do the scenes sometimes, and we'd start with Ethan, and then Jomo or Ethan would be wearing the actual rig, and so he's doing the physical work of an operator in that, and so the line between cinematographer, actor, all these kinds of rigid boundaries become opened up, and you start really feeling the movie. It was the experimental courage and emotional depth that, Ramel always creates. So it was just like seeing them become cinematographers as well, and seeing Jomo be an actor was really fun as an actor, because that's something that just never happens before.
And Hamish, curious to hear your perspective too.
I was a massive fan of the book. I got it the first week it came out, and my bookstore always has like the little signed copies. I don't know, they cheat or whatever. So, and then they called me about it, and they were like, "Do you know the story?" And I was like, and I took a picture of my book, and I was like, "Yeah, I know the friggin'." and then I read the thing about the POV and the thing, and I was like, oh my God, because when you read the book, you read those last pages, and you're like, oh no, and then you read them again, and you read them again, and then he had done it. I mean, he had done that ending with this unbelievable, humongous artistic swing. And then we showed up on set, and they're like, but you're not really going to do it. And then it's like, oh no, I have no idea where the camera is because the guys are hiding from me. And then also, I have no idea really what I'm going to do. And Ramel would be like, there's going to be a crocodile. And might be an alligator. And the kids will all be on desks, but you won't. And you'll say some lines you don't know for a long time. And there's going to be a guy with like a piece of twine that holds the alligator or crocodile. Good luck. And I was like, where's the camera? He was like, you'll never know. So it was just like, I mean, it was like such a, oh God, it was such a joyous, satisfying experience.
Maybe I'll just ask one more, and then we'll take questions from the audience. I'm just picking up on what Anjani was saying about Hale County and how it's somehow different. It's set apart from other representations of Black life in the South. And I'm wondering if, with this material, with this film, did you feel like you were working against certain tropes, certain forms of representation? Were there certain things you didn't want to do, adapting a book about abuse and, brutality and trauma?
Yeah, I think like Hale County, which, evades hard, pillars of narrative, this book is wildly narrative. And so with its, almost focus on trauma being the not even invisible, but maybe just the overarching violence that kind of organizes it, unfortunately. Yeah, I think it was clear that Jeremy and Dede asked me to bring the non-trauma reveling, which kind of cinema has always done, maybe for fact of not knowing how to do it otherwise, or simultaneously knowing that it's gonna get people interested and have emotional responses. And then I think the challenge then for Jocelyn and Barnes, the co-writer and producer, was to give it form. Like, it's actually quite easy. If you say you're not going to do something, there's a million ways to do it, And so it was just trying to come up with the right ones. And one thing we looked at is thinking about when people go through traumatic things, or when people are human beings, like they're not always looking in the eye of evil. Like they're, when something traumatic's happening, and you look where you look, and those impressions become proxies, which then become, sense memories in future life that just ruin your day, or ruin your year, or ruin your relationships. And so we wanted to think about like, where do people look, and then also try to figure out how to bring the truth of the Dozier School, which is all the source material, of course, of Colson's novel, Dozier School for Boys in Florida, that closed 2011. They dug up the bodies in 2013, unfortunately, and fortunately, so that the story could be told and people could know. So how do you, and like bringing their images in when Elwood is being beat, and abstracting them, but having them be clear, is, to me, more visceral and devastating and memorable than seeing Elwood hit, because for all the reasons we know.
Is this something that you talked about with the actors?
No, we talked a lot about it with, of course, the producers, Jeremy Dede and David and Joss. But I think one thing we wanted to do was, and a lot of conversations with Jomo were around, how do we know how we want to shoot this, but we don't want to overburden the actors with the concepts that we think we're introducing. We wanted them to just be able to do their thing and to have experiences with each other, so that whatever they do best is forefronted and not our ideas, which is quite hard, because the first directing moment I would say I had was like directing Ethan's hands, and when Jomo and I remake the frame, we're like, this is something. But we're not like, Ethan, you don't even know. Like, we were so hard to be like, Ethan, you don't even know. Like, if you knew that you're Elwood, and Elwood having his perspective be the perspective that is simultaneously the perspective of the audience, they're having a double consciousness simultaneously, blah, 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 like, not useful,
There was only one time when we were shooting something where Ramel kind of like looked at us and he was like, it's like this is kind of a big deal. and that was like the one moment where I was like, all right, I guess you're right. Like, and that's cool. But otherwise, yeah, I really do appreciate that. It definitely helped kind of be as present as we possibly could during the entire experience.
Yeah.
I actually want to throw in one more question before we open it up. We've talked a lot about POV, but I think another really important element of the film is the use of archival material, and which is quite surprising and idiosyncratic, actually. But if when did archival come into the process for you, and what kind of footage were you looking for?
Yeah, I think the archival inclusion in the film was the hardest to justify to the larger sort of people who usher the film in, simply because it's an abstract idea that I know just fundamentally works if you find the right archival. And it was part of the writing process. If you go back to the script, like, it's just replete with archival in almost the positions that they're in. Not always. Of course, we worked with Nick, editor Nick, not script writer Nick. Scripty Nick. You guys, it's for another time. So I think, but in terms of archival, Allison Brandon and Alex Westfall were the archival sort of leads, and I gave them impossible tasks because we know how fraught the archive is. If you don't, you can just read about it. It's like popular knowledge. Saidiya Hartman has critical fabulation, which is an amazing concept to deal with these issues. And I mention that just to give you guys a bone if you care. And I think looking at archival images and finding the interstitial moments that are sort of outside of the fraught power dynamic between the camera and the person on the inside, going to the Black Family Archive, which Bell Hooks says is the only site of resistance against the sort of onslaught of images made by people who necessarily don't have the same interest in revelatory humanness. is what is what we wanted. We wanted to bring truth, hard, factual, evidence document, pedagogical truth into the film, but have those moments be moments where we're sort of rescuing people from archival conditions in which the power dynamics fraught.
Okay, we can take some questions. I think we have mic runners. Yes. Okay. Maybe we'll start over there.
Hey guys, this is going to be for anyone who wants to answer. So obviously the film is set in Tallahassee, Florida, which is the state capital. The film something that is happening right now in Florida obviously is Governor Ron DeSantis has been rolling back education about Black history, Black culture, DEI, these various things. They've been going into schools and getting rid of books that they feel are woke or unsuitable. So I'm curious as to whether this context was something that affected the production of the film. Were you thinking about it before, during, or after?
Hamish?
No.
I love the question because all the wild and devastating yet unsurprising things that are happening to sort of reverse things that we call progress towards sort of visual justice or some sort of equality are all things that push us to be more in making the film intentional and to burrow down even further in what we were doing. I believe that films like this, especially ones that are dealing with notions of experience and kind of like less narrative driven, they work on the body in ways that produce the same types of behavior that we're fighting against. And so it's like, there's like, the films are unconsciously powerful, obviously. And so knowing that this was happening in Florida, knowing that it's, happened in Texas and it's happened all over the country, and having it be so current with our editing process makes us even more strong-willed, I think, to continue to try to get this thing in front of the largest audience possible.
Yep, right here.
Hi, as an early reader and big fan of the book and now an admirer of your interpretation of it, I'm just curious, did Colson Whitehead have any participation in the production, and has he seen the movie and had a response to it?
As far as I know, Colson Whitehead is the writer who wants to write and do that. And so I talk with Jeremy and Didi, and I can't believe he's letting me do this, get his email address, write him an email, really long one, overly verbose, as I'm sure you can imagine. I always wanted to be a writer type of thing, which is true. And then he writes back, appreciate it, congratulations, and good luck. And at first I was like, I blew it, way too many words. I should have really, but then I think it was just him giving his blessing, which I appreciated because, the pressures of making a film are well known, and to have also the one-to-one pressure of the original artist's expectations. Unsure how that would have panned out. I think he's watched the film. I don't know much else. I've been told by many that Colson is in the middle of writing another book, and I imagine if I were to write him, he would say the same thing. So I'm not going to, but I'm sure I'll chat with him at some point. Yes.
Bravo to all of you, and thank you from the bottom of my heart and for whatever depths my brain can reach at this point for the illumination. This is a magnificent work of art, and I really appreciate it. I am very interested in the way in which the actors and the environment are integrated in such a way that they're inseparable. And there are details that I notice that support that, that I'm curious about where those details came from. For example, rebel green paint. Where do you find these things? How do they erupt into your narrative and get realized in the production?
Thank you. I also will say, I haven't had a chance to listen to David, Fred, or Hamish talk about the film. Spent a bunch of time with these three, and so we've chopped it up a bunch. It's really really moving to hear you all talk about the process, and also from my perspective, the way in which you all worked was like so unbelievably sensory and vulnerable, but also confident, but also open, like all of these strange things. And so I kind of say again that I don't know if anyone else could have done it, it's strange, because maybe someone could have, but it's like David, when you put that thing on and you were like, give me the monitor. And I was like, all right, dude, whatever. Just kidding, it wasn't like that. And like you started, checking angles and like seeing your body. Like I look over and Jomo's like, and we're like, whew, we thought that this was right, Having conversations with Fred early on, and Fred, he actually challenged Joss and I to think about Harper a little bit differently, which was like, whew, beautiful, thank you, you got us to another point. Hamish, just comes in, and I don't know if I should say this publicly, but he was like, I want to bury Spencer. And he did. He did these really, he had these unprecedented idiosyncratic interpretations of this character that I will not take credit for directing, that are just so alive on set that every person that's there is kind of how is this possible type of thing, I can compliment these three, and I have otherwise before, but I just wanted to say those things about those three because I really wanted to respond to everything that you three said when you guys talked. But to your question, ma'am, sorry for speaking at length. You asked about the integration with the environment and
Rebel green paint.
Excuse me?
Rebel green paint.
Rebel green. Thank you. I would have got there, but everyone would have left by then. So I'd say this is the most interesting thing to me about the filmmaking process when you are working with people that you trust, right? So Nora Mendez was the production designer, and shout out Nora. And she had a team of people who were bibliophiles, who were artists, all of them are artists in their own right. And so, I talk with her and I'm like, wow, we've shared the very same view about repeating ideas and visions of history. And so every time, so basically her crew would try to integrate little bits of sort of factual, they're not red herrings because they're not dead ends necessarily, but they are little thought bubbles about what we know and the overlaps of irony, the overlaps of truth, the overlaps of whatever in time and history. And so I will not take credit for that. That's Nora's crew. And Nora, and of course they bring the ideas to me and I approve them, and I thought it was brilliant. And there are, as you mentioned, other ones in there, but this is I think the best part of the collaborative process is working with people who you can actually give the idea to, and then you can work from their sensibility to shape it into something that in combination with all the other elements is way bigger than one person can ever imagine. Sure.
Okay, we have time for one final question. Yeah, we'll go to the front row.
Also, guys, sorry. The environment question's interesting. No, go ahead. It's your time.
Thanks. Dwight Casimir with the Times Weekly in Chicago. I want to thank you for a really brave film that just crystallized so many things. Just to point my own reference to it, I was at the premiere of The Defiant Ones at a little art house on the south side of Chicago. Tony Curtis was there. Sidney was not because he was on another film, of course. There were a lot of places that would not show that film. It was very controversial because it showed a black man and a white man functioning as equals. And I just wanted to talk to you and have you talk to us about interconnecting a lot of these things, because you brought in the Apollo 8 mission, the nonviolent movement, the assassination of King, the brutality, which I experienced at the hands of Chicago police as a teenager. They would just take us and snatch up off the street and beat us, sometimes to death, and people would disappear, just as you pointed out in the film. Your character said Nickel Academy is everywhere. Talk to me about all of that.
Man, I don't know if you want to grab some food or something? Because I don't know about, you said all of it. That's a lot of stuff. I'll say that, one of and we all know this, so sorry if it sounds like I'm being, saying something you don't know. Like, the power of the image, the power of bringing just the Defiant Ones into the film and having Ethan and Brandon be, I guess more specifically Ethan as Elwood, because they even look alike. Like, he looks like Sidney Poitier, in a way. Which is, I think, why Joss and I, that's how we originally came to writing it in the film, in the script, is we were like looking for parallels for these two, and we were like, wait, the Defiant Ones, that was about this. There's no way they'll let us use this in the film. If we can get it in the film, it's gonna be, which was, what a process. But the idea of bringing the image and the memory, so basically, like film, like a smell that takes you back across time and across whatever, like that, having that image there, like took you, like reverse spiraled you. And like, that's the point, one of the points. It's not something that I can be like, I wanted to do this and like that's where it ends. It is about the experience of bringing together images and ideas and time periods and symbols and relationships. Like, race has changed so much since then. Our understanding of the prison systems, our understanding of cinema, our understanding of like, people used to dream in black and white because black and white was the fidelity image recreation for the world. Like, when you do these things, one, you collapse time, you make like, maybe it's like Burton, like the thickness of the moment, like you make the moment thicker. You bring the guardrails of like what happened yesterday and before, like so wide that you can actually experience more what I think it is to truly be a social human. And that's one of the purposes. Some of the things, they're all gestures. We as artists experience them when we're making the film and in the edit room as something that is meaningful to us. We could spill rivers of ink. I love Carlo Rovelli, he said that. Rivers of ink to explain why, but it's more about your experience and what you said than anything I could ever say on stage about it. Yeah.
Any of you want to add anything to that? Okay. Well, I want to thank you all for this film. We're really proud to be opening the festival with it. Thank you so much.